What happens when building a product gets radically easier? Well, you're about to find out. Welcome to 10-Minute Tech Talks, where busy entrepreneurs get sharp insights they can put to work fast. And I'm your host, Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and Tech 5 Radio. Today's featured voice is Dan Olsen, the author of the Lean Product Playbook and the keynote speaker for ProductCamp Pittsburgh. In this excerpt, Dan dives into the fast-rising world of vibe coding and why it matters a whole lot more than just writing code faster. He explains how AI tools are making it easier for non-technical founders, product leaders, and startup teams to create prototypes, test ideas, and move from concept to customer feedback without getting stuck waiting on design or engineering resources. But here's the real spark under the hood. When it becomes easier to build almost anything, the real competitive edge shifts to knowing what to build, why it matters, and how to validate it before wasting time and money. Dan makes the case that product management fundamentals are becoming more important, not less, in this AI era. You'll also hear why entrepreneurs should stop thinking of these tools as just shiny demos or productivity hacks. Dan sees them as a way to unlock faster experimentation, better customer testing, and maybe even the next wave of one-person or ultra-lean companies. So if you've been wondering whether AI is changing how products get built, or whether vibe coding is something founders can actually use, this conversation will get your wheels turning. Here's Dan Olsen.
So I've actually started, last spring started teaching vibe coding workshops and have continued to do that and evolve. So it's really an exciting time. A couple years ago, people were like, oh, is AI going to kill product management? Is product management dead? And at first people weren't sure. And then the pendulum kind of swung about 12 months ago. People were like, you need more PMs because now as the engineers are more efficient, the bottleneck has moved to PM. So, and the way I like to say it is when these tools make it so easy to build anything, then you have to ask yourself, what differentiates one product from another? What's going to make one product succeed versus the other? And the answer is the product management fundamentals, which is what I cover in my book. So yes, the tools have changed. Yes, the pace have changed. The biggest thing is these tools have basically unblocked teams. Like before in the old days, if you wanted to follow my advice and create a prototype before you actually coded your real product and tested it with customers, if you didn't have a designer ready to go to create that prototype, you're kind of dead in the water. You just had to skip that step. Go, I guess we'll skip that step. Skipping that step is why so many products fail, because you just go build the thing that you think is going to succeed before you tested it. And so now with vibe coding tools, teams that anyone who's not a technical person, who's not a designer, can create these robust prototypes, first to get their own heads square on what the idea is, and then two, to show it with people and test it and iterate it. So it's very powerful. The other thing that's interesting is it's called vibe coding. There's still people that see that word coding and vibe coding and they get intimidated. The whole point of vibe coding is you don't need to look at the code. You don't need how to code. So the alternative phrase is like AI prototyping to let people know that they can do it. And we were just talking before we got on, in the last 3 weeks, Anthropic has been on a tear releasing stuff. So specifically Claude Cowork has achieved feature parity with OpenClaw. So if you're thinking about how do I automate my work and tasks, like that's my next talk, and I'm going to try to work that into my talk at ProductCamp. And then on Friday, they launched Claude Design, which is, going after Figma and these other design and vibe prototyping tools. So it's really impressive, and it's hard to stay up to date too. So that's what I try to provide frameworks and help people stay up to date. I created a vibe coding spectrum that classifies all the different tools so you can find the right one for you. So I've been teaching workshops, both private and public, since last summer, every 2 or 3 weeks. And it's been fun as the tools evolve. So actually, when I'm in Pittsburgh, I'm going to be coming in early and offering basically almost a full day workshop the day before Product Camp. So Product Camp's on Saturday the 16th, and the workshop is on Friday the 15th. And basically, it'll be at the same venue, LaRoche University. And above and beyond vibe coding, I'm going to work in the new Claude design tool that just came from Anthropic. So how to use that tool, as well as addressing that from prototype to production gap. And also, I'm going to try to cover at least a little bit of Claude Cowork, basically. So it's like the full stack. If you want to be a modern AI PM, I'm going to give you a sampler platter of all 4 of those things: how to design, how to prototype, how to hand off better to engineers, and also how to automate your work with Claude Cowork. So I'm super excited about that. I just got the event page up. There's early bird pricing available. So if you want to hop on that, that'd be a great way to get your hands dirty and learn hands-on with the latest tools.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to that.
So anyway, it's exciting times. And I think that people in the product world need to decide, am I going to, some people are on the fence. If you're on the fence, you're probably going to get left behind. So you got to jump in and go to events like ProductCamp so you can sharpen your tools and stay up on the latest. Because I think the PMs that lean into AI and really embrace it and learn it are going to thrive and see their responsibility, just grow.
Yeah, a couple things are really getting my mind spinning. First off, I love using the term vibe coding. I think it makes for a great t-shirt. It makes you look super cool because I'm uncool and I can be like, yeah, I've vibe coded a few times, so I can wear the
There you
t-shirt. But most importantly, before we began the interview, you had mentioned how you just see vibe coding as this way of just getting more ideas out there and getting people to actually build stuff faster, and you can literally just scale so much quicker. And it didn't even really occur to me from just building a business. And so many people are using vibe coding just for like simple things or ideas that could be features, but the idea that you could actually turn some of these things into companies or into, investable type of companies. I think that's right. That's where I get really excited. Tell me more about that. 'Cause that to me is like the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing. I mean, with the vibe coding spectrum, I like basically there's 6 categories from less technical to more technical, but I split it in half because the left half is actually what I would call vibe prototyping, and the right half is more vibe coding. Now,
Okay.
the one thing that would happen, Jonathan, is if you go create these prototypes and then you're like, great engineering team, here's a validated prototype. The engineering team would be like, okay, but none of that code has anything to do with our production code base. So I got to go figure out how to implement this on our base. So that is the prototype to production challenge.
Okay.
And I saw it last spring and I knew it. But in the last month, companies are just now providing robust solutions for that. So that basically even non-technical people, what you're starting with is your existing code as a way, again, without having to know about the code, you can start with your existing design system and components. Claude Design, they just launched on Friday, has full support for importing your design system so that whoever is creating those prototypes is starting with your kind of real code. So then after you finish your prototype and you're ready to hand it off to engineering, that merge differential, that difference that they're going to have to merge in is way smaller. And so people have been waiting for that streamlining to happen. That being said, back on the vibe prototyping side, there are tools out there like Lovable and Bolt. If you were building a product from scratch, you can build your whole product in Lovable and Bolt and never really look at the code. And you can have a custom domain. They have Stripe integration. They have Shopify integration. They have been building up their feature set for like solopreneurs, I would call it.
Okay.
And, there are definitely people that have built 6-figure businesses on those things from scratch. And, we're just waiting to hear about the first 7-figure one-person vibe coded thing. It's going to happen probably any day. So there are those kind of use cases where it's just, hey, I'm doing it solopreneur. But also there obviously most product managers work in a company where there are other product managers and engineers and existing product and existing code. And so there's increased support for their work or use case as well.
It is just fascinating to me. And what I love most about this is when you talk about the amount of AI being used here to vibe code and you think that's less humans, not really, because what you said, it really creates the need for more product managers because you need the people to really make sure that these become products.
Yeah.
They're not just features.
And then just to kind of cite, instead of me just saying it, to cite like kind of even someone who's also more authoritative is Andrew Ng, who's one of the OG, AI person back when it was machine learning and deep learning. He had a talk he gave, I think it was August, last summer at an event, AI event, where he was basically saying, hey, the startup teams that I'm working with are telling me that the bottleneck has moved from engineering to PM. And so he mentioned, he's not in the PM world, but he's familiar with this. We use these ratios. It's just a high rule of thumb, a high level rule of thumb. It's like, hey, if you've got, 15 or 20 engineers per PM, that PM is not going to be able to do their job effectively. It's just, they're just going to, be so busy just filling out Jira tickets, keeping the engineers busy in Scrum ceremonies, right? And so you get more healthy ratio is something like, say 6 to 9, something like that. I've worked in some places where they even have 4 or 5 to 1, so call it 4 to 9, and it depends obviously on the amount of UX and how much back end versus front end. But anyway, there are these healthy ratio ranges. And he was saying, yeah, there's these ranges out there. And he's saying that now I'm seeing my teams go more to 3 to 1 or 2 to 1. And then he closed his comment by saying, in fact, there was one new CEO startup that came to me and said they wanted to flip the ratio and have 2 PMs for every 1 engineer. And he kind of said immediately, I don't know if that's right or not, but somebody at least went there, right?
That was Dan Olsen, author of the Lean Product Playbook and keynote speaker for ProductCamp Pittsburgh, with a smart look at why vibe coding is more than a buzzword. It's a shift in how ideas get tested, shaped, and turned into real products. A few takeaways really jump out for me. First, vibe coding lowers the barrier to building and prototyping, which means entrepreneurs can get ideas out of their heads and in front of customers faster. Second, that speed makes product judgment even more valuable. When almost anyone can build, the winners will be the people who understand the customers, validate quickly, and make smart product decisions. Third, founders and product leaders who lean into these tools may now have a real edge while others are still standing on the sidelines. And that may be the most important point of all. AI is not replacing strategic thinking, it's increasing the premium on it. If you enjoyed this excerpt, be sure to check out the full conversation. And if you're heading to ProductCamp Pittsburgh, keep an eye out for Dan's keynote and the workshop. Sounds like they'll be packed with practical ways to use these tools in the real world. You've been listening to 10-Minute Tech Talks, business insights, and growth hacks for the time-crunched entrepreneur. This is Jonathan Kirstein, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.